And joining us now to talk more about the president's trip to Israel is Adam Kinzinger, the Republican congressman from Illinois and a member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. And thank you for joining us. What is your main takeaway following that joint press conference we heard between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu?
Well, you never know what you're going to get with a press conference with President Trump. He likes to kind of freewheel sometimes, but I'll tell you, one of the best things I've seen out of both the Saudi part of this trip so far and in Israel is really America's back. And America's back in the Middle East. We're there not to impose wills, but we're there to bring stability like the United States has the ability to do. I've actually been pretty impressed over the last few years with the stronger relationship between Israel and some of its Arab partners. And you saw, frankly, one of the first direct flights, as trite as it seems, that went from Saudi Arabia to Israel. And so I think what I saw in the president and in his time in Israel so far is somebody that's committed to that strong relationship to show no daylight between the U.S. and Israel. And I hope this starts a kind of a new chapter in what has been in the last few years a fairly strained relationship.
Congressman, regarding the president's unpredictability, there's a Palestinian official who has said that maybe it's this level of being unpredictable or crazy, as he suggested in the president, that might shake things up enough to actually achieve some tangible progress in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Do you agree with that?
You know, it's possible. I mean, if you look back to the 80s, one of the first things that Ronald Reagan did was fire all the air traffic controllers when they had a big strike. And that actually sent a very strong message to the Russians at the time that said, this guy is unpredictable and we have to take him at his word with what he's going to say. And that actually, as little as that is and as domestic as that is, that had huge ramifications internationally. So I think the president both striking an airfield in Syria, striking a convoy in Syria recently, talking tough on North Korea very legitimately, I think all of that, and with the unpredictability, shows that this may be a person that can come. Look, we've had high hopes for, peace in Israel for a very long time, so we ought not get our hopes up too high. But I think he may be the right guy to come in out of politics with a new view on things and say, let's see if we can find a deal that works for both. But we know there are some serious challenges in that, including the Palestinians have to recognize Israel's right to exist in the first place.
And Congressman, do you get a sense that the president will be able to help foster a new diplomatic era between Israel and the Saudis? And if so, how do you see that playing out?
Well, I think, look, there's a better connection happening, as maybe even as much of an undercurrent as it is. I would like to see that be a stronger relationship. The point needs to be this. Look, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and other Arab countries face some very serious challenges, whether it's ISIS, whether it's instability in Syria. That instability in Syria can lead to the whole next generation of terrorists. And so there's a lot of challenges in Saudi Arabia that obviously need to be confronted. Women should have equal rights to men, for goodness sakes. This is something that we determined 100 years ago. But to build a stronger relationship, I think would be beneficial to both partners. We know it's going to be very difficult, so let's go into this eyes wide open. But I think if President Trump can work miracles, maybe this is one he can work.
Congressman, I'm sure you must be hearing from a lot of your colleagues about what the administration is calling the distractions with the Russia investigation. Is it much of a distraction in terms of Congress doing its work with the Trump White House, or is the president able to have a rather unfettered trip overseas to try to focus on that as far as Congress is concerned?
It's kind of all the above. So Congress is going to continue to do our work. Our agenda hasn't slowed down one iota because of any of these stories. We have hearings, we have committee stuff, we have votes, and we're going to continue with our agenda. Where it does hurt a little bit is when the 24-hour news cycle is consumed by some of the Russia questions. The president can't be out there selling the Republican agenda, which we really need him to do. But I think this international, those questions are going to be around for a while, so we should just recognize that. But this trip is very important for the president asserting the fact of a couple things. Number one, he's very competent in foreign policy. Number two, he can actually maybe bring some folks together that nobody thought could be brought together. And lastly, but I think very importantly, is America is back. I think we've suffered 8 years of retreat from the world stage. We're paying that price now. And I think President Trump is showing that, look, we understand we have a unique mission in this world and we're ready to accept it.
Congressman, a lot of disappointment from many that the president has not yet made a move on the embassy and most likely will not this trip. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm disappointed too. We all, in fact, it's the law of Congress that the embassy move to Jerusalem. We'd love to see that happen with haste and speed. To fairness to the administration, other administrations have said the same thing, or at least implied with a Congress that made it the law and haven't done it. This is as you all know more than anybody, a very kind of tough thing to negotiate. But I would love to see him announce it. I don't have my hopes up that he will. My hope is that ultimately it gets done, though, and we can move it. Even though we have a beautiful embassy in Tel Aviv and a beautiful residence, I'd love to see it in Jerusalem.
All right. Thank you so much, Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Thanks for joining us. Well,